How'd you like a surprise? We'd like to surprise you. Big government is funded by the Republicans, right? They're the ones who pay for these corporate fat cats. The Democrats don't do that. They're the party that looks after the little guy, the workers, right? Well, maybe not. We have a guest. He's written a book called Crapitalism. Jason Matera is with us right now. And Jason, I've been reading your book. It's very interesting. Is this a nonpartisan issue you're dealing with?
Well, crapitalism should be a nonpartisan issue and draw bipartisan condemnation. And there are both Democrats and Republicans I mentioned in the book. Having said that, as you just noted, the irony of the Obama administration, where there is a constant outcry from the left on the growing wealth inequality in America and the gap between the rich and the poor, and always whining about the 1%. The irony is that there is a redistribution of wealth in this country, and it has gone from the middle class on up to people with political access who have turned that political access into crony-fueled profit. And it's largely because of the policies of this administration, because when you have big government, there are then big government contracts to give out, and you inevitably are left with political favoritism while the rest of us are left holding the bill.
Now, we're all holding the bill from what's called Obamacare. It's done, if you like your health care, you can keep it as a lie. If you're paying a certain amount, it won't increase. That was a lie. You point out, though, that the big pharma that you'd think would be against this put something like $250 million in support of it. And one of them was Pfizer. What did they do?
Absolutely. So you had the big drug companies and even the insurance companies in America, Pfizer being one of the largest drug companies. They're famous for Viagra, of course. They partnered essentially with the Obama administration to foist Obamacare on the rest of us. And the reason why is because now they have a mandated batch of new customers. So while we're constantly hearing this rhetoric about, oh, it's a woman's rights issue to have free contraception, well, that was a minor issue to people like Pfizer. They looked at contraception and they said, hey, if we can get lawmakers in Washington, D.C. to demand that insurance companies now provide and employers essentially provide contraception, then we're going to make a whole lot more money. So one of the cronies I write about is a woman named Sally Sussman, who is the chief lobbyist for Pfizer. She's also an Obama bundler, and she was the one who had the direct access to the White House and was shaping the law. And you had the drug companies partner with the Obama administration, a collusion in order to stick us with Obamacare because it was huge profits for them. And Pfizer needed this because they had patents that were expiring. So their patents were expiring. They were going to lose money due to generic drugs. So how do you rectify that situation? Well, what the crony way is, and that is you get bureaucrats to mandate a law that is good for them, but it's misery for us.
Well, specifically, if you want a generic, it's so much cheaper than these drugs that are patented. What did this law mandate? That there was one class of drugs that had to be covered by this insurance?
Well, when the Health and Human Services Department finalized the Obamacare details with the drug companies urging, what they said was that each insurance plan of every state now had to meet a certain requirement and essentially had to offer a plan that would provide not generic drugs, but the name brand quality one. So you have companies like Pfizer now who also provide generic, but they were able to help write the law in such a manner that employers would have to pick up a much more burdensome insurance policy that provided name brand drugs that are more expensive and therefore fatten Pfizer's bottom line. Now, here's the thing, Pat. I'm not against people making profit. Conservatives love capitalism and the free market, and if you're able to provide a good and a service that people enjoy, more power to you. But that's not what we have today, as the Pfizer example illustrates. We have crapitalism where there are goods and services that people may not want, like more expensive health care plans. But regardless of our wishes, you have that political favoritism and cronyism come together and then inflict upon us a law we do not want, plans that we did not want or did not need, and now we're shelling out of our pockets our hard-earned money just so some fat cat either on Wall Street or in Washington, D.C. can add to their bottom line and minimize their exposure.
You've written about a man who I wasn't familiar with, really, because I've known of Henry Kaiser over the years, but this gentleman's name is Kaiser, and he's got a foundation, and what he did was shocking. Tell us about it.
Yeah, George Kaiser, he's of the Solyndra fame. We remember Solyndra was one of the most high-profile green energy companies that went bust and left taxpayers holding a very, very large bill. Well, he was the main financial backer. He was able not only to restructure that Solyndra deal before they went bankrupt in order to minimize his exposure and leave taxpayers holding the majority of the cost, but he also sets up his foundation in a very interesting way. He sets it up as a public charity, not a private foundation. And bottom line, it means that while he has less control over his investments, he doesn't actually have to give away money like, a foundation would. And in fact, he uses his foundation in order to invest alongside other of his for-profit companies and his other endeavors. The reason why I put George Kaiser in the book is because the guy's a flat-out hypocrite. He has said repeatedly that the rich don't pay enough in taxes and our taxation system isn't progressive enough. The fact is, though, he has these public charities, these other very complicated accounting measures that are all meant to minimize his tax exposure. Oh, meanwhile, he's calling for the rest of us to pay higher taxes. So that's also the capitalist way, is hypocrisy, saying one thing and then doing everything possible to make sure that you don't have to live by that very same standard.
We've had General Electric, and we've had washing machines and refrigerators and everything else they've made, fans and so forth. Household names since Thomas Edison. There's a guy named Jeff Immelt who's head of it, and he is a close friend of Obama and one of his close advisors. And what has he gotten?
Jeffrey Immelt is a classic crapitalist. The man is a registered Republican, says he's a proud Republican, and yet if you look at GE's business plan today, it's largely dependent on government subsidies. In fact, they look where the government subsidies are, and they build their business plan around that. So if we're talking about cap and trade, which would essentially tax Americans for fossil fuel production, GE is behind that because they would stand to make windfall profits. They push for the electrification of American vehicles, more electric cars on the road. Well, it just so happens that GE builds the charging station for those electric cars. They push for renewable energies to industries like the wind farms. It just so happens that the GE builds the windmills for wind farms. So it's a classic case of General Electric looking to make money, not where there's necessarily a need in the marketplace, but them having their cronies in government create a mandated need, and they are put themselves in a position to reap windfall profits off the back of the American taxpayers.
Jason, is there an outrage? You read this book and you really, it makes you mad. Is there an outrage? It's a good book. I recommend it to people. Has there been an outrage as a result of the things you've exposed here?
Well, I think it is infuriating, all these ways and schemes that people with powerful access rig the game in their favor. They claim to look out for the little guy, right? They're always saying, well, we're going to look out for the little guy. It's all about the economic development or the environment or the children. It's about none of that. It's all about putting more money in their pockets. And I think people are really going to enjoy the book. But I must say they will get mad. I've laid it out in 27 chapters on 27 different cronies ranging in industry, but the common thread is that they're digging in our pocket and making us part of their business plan, whether we want to or not.
Jason, excellent book.